Heidi ho, neighborinos. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, here on this glorious September the 26th, Anno Domini. Good to be here. Sorry I missed last week. I was a long way away. I was about 6,000, not quite, 5,000 miles away. It's not the furthest I've ever been. Thailand was further and Australia was further, but it's furthest north I've ever been. So that was kind of exciting. Not going to give too much of this away. I'll save most of it for the questions, but I was in Norway last week for 4 nights, I think. And it's funny, I kind of got something that I had been really looking forward to, but I got it so weakly that I almost wish I hadn't gotten it. I went, took the flight out of LA at about 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock, pretty much head due north. Head pretty nearly over Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, go right over the North Pole. And I'd never seen the Northern Lights in my life, and I always wanted to. And sure enough, once we got up into Canada, it was dark on the plane, and I looked outside and I saw it looked like a smudge, like a cloud, like a gray smudge. Now, there's apparently not apparently, there's a website that predicts the aurora based on the solar weather. And that particular night I was flying, it had assigned a scale of 3 out of 10. So as I looked, sure enough, as we got further north, you could see it. There was one point where they were bright enough so that you could tell that they were green, and just a little bit, you could see a little bit of vertical structure, not a lot of movement, but they were definitely the Northern Lights. On the way home to the airport, on the way back, a guy who was driving the cab was from North Cape of Norway, and he says up there, nighttime, just everybody go outside and their faces are green. It's like a disco, just the lights just moving, and that's what I want to see. But I didn't get to see him. I had an incredible experience there, and not only did I have a good experience there, I learned a lot about a lot of things. Some of the things I expected, in fact, most of the things I expected, but some of them I didn't. And we'll talk about that. I guess I may just wait to do the questions on it. So, but the trip to Norway was great. I really, honestly, and I mean this sincerely, that country I really think has got the title of the best socialism in the world. I don't think socialism can be any better than it was in Norway, because they've got a small population. They're serious about trying to protect their cultural identity, and they're bloody rich. And that's kind of the kicker. I went, so I got there, and everything's immaculate. The airport is immaculate. And the entire time I was in Norway, I know I'm prone to hyperbole, but I actually genuinely mean this. I am quite sure that I've seen more people in a crowded DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles building in Los Angeles than I have during the entire 4 days I was in Norway. I couldn't believe it. There was nobody there. But the people who were there it's like going to the planet of the Vulcans or the planet of the Elves. Everybody's tall and really gorgeous and physically fit like I've never seen in my life. I never saw so many people riding up hills on bicycles, and then they're getting ready for cross-country skiing time, so they've got the ski blades, and they're going uphill with the poles with these skis, and I just was like, whoa. I'll take the Camaro. But with major amount of respect. The thing about Norway that's so interesting, somebody who just pointed out, I love Norway. I really did. I really loved it. Sir Wilbin said not almost no military budget. That's right, almost no military budget. Excellent troops. They got really top quality troops. All 7 of those guys, they're really good. But there's only 7 of them, and but here's Norway in a nutshell. Everything is about the environment. Everything. There are so many electric cars there, and if it's not electric, it's a hybrid. And the recycling has to be done into like 6 or 7 different bins. And many places I went, I saw this little poster that said Oslo, the greenest city, the greenest capital in all of Europe. And that's great. But the reason that Oslo is the greenest capital in all of Europe is because they've got the money for all of this stuff. And they have the money for all this stuff because they sell just a buttload of oil. And to me, that to me is the entire thing in a nutshell. They're proud of being the greenest capital in all of Europe. And the way they can afford that is by selling just tons of oil. Am I the only person who sees just a little something, a little off with this, And by the way, they're not selling oil to the United States, which is the only country in the world that's actually reduced its carbon footprint and exceeded the Paris emission controls. We didn't do it. Almost, it's kind of true. We didn't do it on purpose. We just happened to be a happy accident of all this natural gas and fracking and stuff. But they're so proud of it. And the environment stuff is everywhere. And for them to have this thing powered by oil, which I'm sure they sell to China or India, where it's just burned and, I just find that really kind of shockingly hypocritical. That's just me. So here's my takeaway from Norway. Spotlessly clean. Everything works. Just the public toilets would do credit to, a very nice hotel in LA, and other public toilets in LA probably pretty much beyond description, especially at the beach. That is a terrifying thing. And the train system from the airport, just get on this beautiful, fast, quiet, modern, clean train, and a couple stops, and you get off. The cars in Norway were really cute. I could have fit, certainly the car I got picked up in could have fit in the trunk of my Camaro, and I have a small trunk on the Camaro. So all of that stuff. And everybody is, and the thing that struck me the most, it hit me first in Sweden because I connected in Stockholm. But you go into, Stockholm was relatively crowded. And you go into Stockholm, and there's just an entire airport full of people, and it's absolutely quiet in there. Nobody yelling, nobody screaming, nobody calling for attention, nobody's taking selfies of themselves. That's why I offered the Millennial Selfie Challenge, Selfie Socialist Challenge. Okay, millennials, if all of you millennials can fill up an entire airport terminal and sit there quietly for 3 hours without talking loud, without talking at all, unless you have something to say to somebody, and no selfies, and nobody dresses any better than anybody else, just everything low-key, you do that for 3 hours, you can have your socialism. They wouldn't last 10 minutes. And I know that sounds flip, but you have to have the one to have the other, at least to have it work. So everybody works there. It's just they don't get to keep much of it. So lots of stuff that was really good certainly from a infrastructure point of view. And I'm speaking to you from Los Angeles, formerly part of the United States of America, and there is no place where the infrastructure is just plain not only not working, but just utterly mocked, like in Los Angeles. So I'm coming from third world USA, which doesn't make me very proud to say, but that's what it is. So that was a pretty big difference. It's spotlessly clean. I saw one cigarette butt up at the giant ski jump over Oslo. One cigarette butt in the grass, and I went over and picked it up. I mean, it was astonishing. And then I had dinner at a restaurant up near the ski jump at the top of Oslo, and it's an old restaurant from like 1866, I want to say, all made out of wood, and it's got a great view overlooking Oslo, and you can see the Oslo fjord, and Oslo is a charming little town. It looks like, at the most, it looks like Santa Monica. It's probably smaller than Santa Monica, but it's very beautiful. And I was sitting up there and I was thinking about how everybody looks so healthy and everything's provided for and all of this stuff. And I realized I used to think of Scandinavian countries as a nursing home where you're taken care of from birth to death. You get a 2-year, 4-year leave from your job to when you're a mother, and they cover your college, they cover your health care, and then they cover your retirement, all of it. I thought it was a nursing home. Then I got to Norway and I realized, no, that's not quite it. What I realized about Norway and about the best socialism on earth, and I don't mean this in a way that sounds as as prejudiced against it as it does. But this, I gave this a lot of thought, and I really think this is it. Norway and really top level socialism it's a game preserve for humans. That's exactly what it is. If you had a group of humans and you were some kind of alien race or something, and you took a group of humans off the earth and you wanted to take really, really good care of them, that would be Oslo. Everything is taken care of. Everything's there's tons and tons and tons of buildings, no luxury, but lots of really good, clean stuff. Very few people. Downtown Oslo on Friday, it was like a post-apocalyptic movie, like somebody dropped a bioweapon or something. It was like, oh, there's a person way down there. But that's it. It's like a human game preserve, and I mean that in as positive a way and as negative way as you possibly can put it. Like the Eloi, Helios 1776 says. That's exactly right. It's not as sinister as the Eloi. I mean, there are no Morlocks struggling to eat them. I went to downtown Oslo. I went to the center of the immigration district. I was in the police department, voluntarily, as it turns out. And I did not see any sign that Oslo or Norway was being overrun. I did see that in the airport in Sweden, but Norway's different. And the Norwegians are fighters, and they're entirely different people than Sweden. But it's a human game preserve. And I just had these constant conflicting emotions. One of them is I'm driving through this and I'm saying, why is California not clean like this? Why isn't it clean? Why don't things work? Why is this just turning into just a living hell and all the rest of it? And I realized Americans are too loud and they're too messy for socialism. It would never, ever, ever, ever work here. You need 5 million people in an area the size of Texas, and you need money coming from the outside, coming up out of the ground in the oil wells. So this is as good as socialism gets. And I was looking at everything working, everything clean, people in phenomenal shape. All of these are definite pluses, no question. They're real big deals. They're nice assets. And then I also realized, even after 4 days, I just looked around and said, nothing happens here. Nothing happens here, and nothing will ever happen here. Nothing. Nothing will happen. And that's it. It's a game preserve. It's a place where humans can be kept safely, cleanly, given top quality food and medical care and housing, and they're allowed to roam, free roam within the habitat, so long as they don't go past the boundaries of the habitat out onto the freeway, which would be the rest of the world. But as long as they stay within Norway, humans can have just as lovely an existence as you possibly could. And that's when I realized, like I said, nothing really happens there. And then the final part of this kind of analogy clicked in. And again, I know a lot of people are going to say this, that what I'm saying is that I'm putting Norway down. I'm not. It's a choice. It's the kind of person you are. But I realized that the difference between Norway and Los Angeles is that and America rather, is that in Norway, the people are taken care of the way you would take care of pets. And in Los Angeles, why do I keep saying Los Angeles? I'm referring to America. They're separate things. In America, they're not. And so the question is, do you want to be a wolf or do you want to be a poodle? And everybody who hears that, conservative, wolf, yeah, definitely want to be the wolf. Well, okay. Well, wolves starve to death. Poodles don't starve to death. Wolves are covered with fleas. Poodles aren't covered with fleas. Wolves break a leg or get some kind of disease, and that's the end of the wolf. They don't get $30,000 worth of operations done on them or anything. Do you want to be a wolf or do you want to be a poodle? And there's a lot of advantages to being a poodle. A lot. You're always kept safe, you're always kept warm, you're well fed, medical care, all of it. It's exactly like having a pet. And a wild animal doesn't have any of those benefits. And it's easy to see why people, especially when they get used to comfort, want to be treated like pets. And the appeal of that is very strong. I certainly felt it a couple times. But also, Rubber City Rebel just said, poodles never leave the yard. That's it. That's right. They never leave the yard. And poodles aren't free. Poodles don't go where they want to go when they want to go there. Poodles are allowed to go out and pee twice a day with a rope around their neck. And wolves don't have to worry about that. Wolves go where they want to go. And I began to realize that this difference between American independence and European interdependence is really a matter of personal taste. And I think the personal taste is largely determined by, well, it's actually, I think it's genetic, but not genetic in a race or color-based way. I think that the people who were natural wolves got on a ship and sailed for someplace free, and that particular aspect of Americans as being risk takers has been selected from all around the world. And that's why I think we are as wild as we can. So, look, I mean, you can look at the good side and the bad side. No, but poodles aren't going to the moon, and going to the moon is cool. But poodles aren't having mass shootings either, and the two things are this is the thing I think that's most important. These two things are connected. They're connected. You can't have one without the other. Everybody wants to have them both, but you can't. You have to make a decision. You can be a wolf, which means you have the freedom and you got the wind in your hair and you raise your kids the way you want to. You go where you want to, when you want to go there. You go over the horizon searching for you got all of that. But you can also be attacked by other wild animals or bears and eagles come down and swoop down and take your kids and violence is everywhere. Nothing's controlled. And if you're hurt, you're hurt. And if you're hurt badly enough, you're dead. It's a lot more brutal. But nothing happens if you're a poodle. You're in the backyard or in the house. The weather doesn't change, temperature doesn't change. You're kind of bored. I always feel bad about leaving. Cats are different because cats they just chill out. But if you ever had to leave a dog for 4 or 5 days and somebody just came and walked the dog and that's all they did, you'd feel awful about it. You'd feel awful about it because the dog is dependent on you for company and emotional support and all that stuff. And that dog is suffering, if you're not there, because it's totally dependent on you. You leave a wolf alone, the wolf's perfectly happy. So, Eric Blake's got a great line. Funny how Norway Preserve is filled with poodles that are built like wolves. That's the truth. I saw some of the quietest, most well-mannered people in my life that looked like they could rip me limb from limb and eat my joints raw. There's a lot of Viking left in those people. My host there actually said that said something that's kind of the inverse of what my wife says all the time, and that is that everybody in America just looks so different. There's so many different looking people, and everybody's dressed different. If you want to wear your hair purple and be a guy and go out in a pink mini skirt, well, okay. And you don't see any of that in these socialist countries. So that's when I kind of realized that the people who are calling the loudest for socialism, these social justice warriors, are the people who would do the worst in it. They wouldn't like the fact that you don't get to have purple hair. And they don't see how they're connected, but I do. You have to pick one or the other. And if you want the freedom, then you have to take the risks. And because you're taking risks, you don't have your health care taken care of. You're going to have to pay for that. And because you're free to defend yourself, because it's a wild world out there, other people are kind of free to shoot up movie theaters or schools. That's part of life in the wild. Sometimes things like that happen out in the wild. And so you just have to make a decision. Do you want to be well taken care of, free of fleas, warm and well fed, and never, ever, ever see what's on the other side of the backyard, or run free or do whatever you want to do? Or are you willing to have the freedom to go where you want to go, do what you want to do, and are you prepared to accept the consequences of that? Which is, there are bears out there, there's disease out there, there are ticks and wolves out there, there's no medical care out there, all of it. And that's when I realized that in order to get the socialism to work as well as it does in Norway, because it certainly does work in Norway, there's no question about it. The two things you need, three, number one, you need a really, really rich and powerful and aggressive and nasty, loud, boisterous, screaming bunch of children who have decided that they want to defend themselves, and then they can defend you as well. That's a handy thing to have, is to have across the ocean a bunch of raving lunatics who work hard, invent things, get a lot of money, and then in protecting themselves, they also protect us. That's part of the key of socialism working. the second part of it is the conformity that socialism requires is the same conformity that makes innovation and just plain fun. Forget even fun, just interesting. Makes it impossible. You can't have it. You can't have on some level you cannot have the purple hair, pierced nose and socialism. Because if you have the pierced nose and the purple hair, you're calling out for attention. And in a socialist country, calling out for your own attention not only doesn't work, it's just the whole system fails. You have to be prepared to be lost in the society. And it's a choice. And to say that there are no benefits to that poodle life is nuts. There are plenty of times when it's better to be a poodle. But people want both. They want to be taken care of. They want the health care. What they want is they want to be a poodle that's let outdoors, right? They want to be a poodle that's let to run free. But if you leave your poodle outdoors, it's going to get hit by a car, or it's going to get attacked by coyotes, or it's going to do something else. You can't have them both. You can't. And likewise, you cannot keep a wolf in a backyard, even if it does get health care and food and all the rest of it. They're mutually exclusive. You got to pick one or the other. I very much like Norway, and I very much admired a great deal of what this world's greatest socialism looks like. But I wouldn't trade it. And after 4 days there, I would have crawled over. I was ready to crawl over broken glass to get home. Oh, another good one from Eric Blake. Poodles also tend to be spayed or neutered. Yeah, that's funny how that works, isn't it, with pets? Can't have you go out there breeding and everything because we've already got enough people. So we're just going to get you. We're going to take you down to the doctor, and no charge to you. We'll just get you fixed. Anyway, and Helios, again, for the way on's got it right. He says the problem with the wolves are not trying to prevent the sheep from living like sheep, but the sheep are trying to prevent the wolves from wolf life. That's it in a nutshell. If they would just leave us alone, you could take your pick. But they won't leave us alone because the wolf has nothing but contempt for the poodle, but the poodle is deadly envious of the wolf, and so the poodle wants the wolf domesticated, because having the wolf free out there on a mountaintop is annoying to the poodle. It reminds the poodle of what it is, which is a poodle. And by the way, in the airport in Oslo, just so you understand, this was mid-morning on a Saturday. You walk into Oslo airport, absolutely magnificent architecture, beautiful thing. You come in and you look down at the counter for Norwegian Air, and you see 5 people behind the desk, and every one of them is waiting for you. It's not like I'm in a line like in LAX where I have to wait there 20 minutes to get there are 5 people ready to assist me, and that's real nice. But when I was in the airport, and after I'd gone through security and I was on my way towards the gates, they had a giant video. By the way, biggest video wall I've ever seen in my life was in Los Angeles International Airport. And the shortest time I've ever been through customs in my life was coming back into LA, which very, very much surprised me and pleased me. It was as fast as there were tons of people there. It was just as fast as we could walk. Anyway, I'm in Oslo Airport, and I'm coming back, and I look over, and there's this, video screen size of a wall. And there's like a big close-up of the Statue of Liberty, and it was an ad for Norwegian Air. It was like, the States has never been closer. And then they showed L.A., they showed like Rodeo Drive, which is, but I remember seeing the Statue of Liberty up there and thinking, yeah, you're goddamn right, Statue of Liberty, it's one country, goddamn it. I'm from there. I'm from that place, So there you go. It's really something. It really is. Anyway, we'll take some questions. I wonder if any questions will have to do with the Democrats' recent attempts to absolutely guarantee Donald Trump's reelection. We'll find out about that. I just want to check one thing here because I have not been up on the news too much today. All right. Well, I I have I have often wondered at how such little things can be blown up into such big things in this country, but this absolutely takes the cake. It really does. I've never seen anything like this. I just don't know what to say about it. I've never seen anything like it. As I understand it now, the Democrats are going to try and say that Donald Trump needs to be removed from office because he said, "Hey, do me a favor." And he said, "Hey, do me a favor," after the Ukrainian president brought up the issue of corruption. And I don't think you can be impeached over saying, "Hey, do me a favor." And here's the one thing I've been saying from the beginning, and I don't know if I've heard very many people talking about this, but to me, this is the entire point of the thing. There is an enormous, enormous night and day difference between saying, "Hey, I'd like you to look into something for me," versus saying, "Hey, I want to make sure that nobody looks into this for me." Right? There is the reason that they're screaming so loud about Trump and impeachment now is for the same reason that they brought up the whole Russian collusion thing in the first place. Hillary Clinton colluded with Russia, no question about it. They bought her influence. She sells a quarter of the U.S. uranium to Russia just a few days after Russia pays Bill Clinton to come over and speak for 45 minutes and pays him $850,000. So if Hillary Clinton's guilty of collusion with Russia, then what you have to do is you have to accuse Donald Trump of it, and loudly and quickly. And when all of a sudden Joe Biden's son and his illicit dealings with Ukraine come out, and your front runner is now actually showing real signs of actual trouble because it looks like Hunter Biden got his dad to make deals with Ukraine in exchange for his $800,000 salary. And so if this is about to break, then there's nothing you can do but, by God, we got to pin it on Trump. And so, okay, now we know. We have the world that we have the world of, and this is the world. So what do we know? We know that if they go ahead with this, they can bring articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. We know that these articles of impeachment will essentially be based on Donald Trump saying, "Hey, do me a favor." The Ukrainian president who weighed in on this said, not only did he not influence me, but I brought the subject up, and that's in the transcript. You're going to have a hard time convicting him. But this is the point. Most of you know this, some of you don't. Impeachment is a two-step process. As usual, the founders got it exactly right. As usual, the genius of these men. I don't, for the life of me, it's a very compelling argument for divine intervention. And I'm as serious as I can be. I do not know where the wisdom came from. But what the structure is that the House of Representatives, which is elected every 2 years, it is flushed every 2 years. It'd be nice if it was flushed every 2 years, but at least you have a chance to flush it every 2 years. The House of Representatives can determine that there are grounds for removing the president from office, and articles of impeachment can be generated in the House. So the House basically says, here's all the thing the president did wrong. This is what we think. We think he's got to go. And then they vote on that. And if it wins a vote, then it goes to the Senate. The Senate doesn't create the charges. The Senate doesn't create the case. The Senate just votes on it. This is the genius of these people. So if the Democrats, which control the House, want to go and advance these articles of impeachment over this thing, okay, then you will be able to say that Donald Trump was impeached to the degree that Bill Clinton was impeached. Neither one of them removed from office. There's no chance Donald Trump's going to be removed from office. And I happen to think that the left is so absolutely overwhelmed with hatred for Donald Trump that I think even they know that the deal that they're making is, we want that asterisk, we want that impeached thing on Donald Trump's name so badly that we'd be willing to trade another 4 years of Donald Trump for it. And folks, I don't know about you, but I'll take that deal. Absolutely, I'll take it. If I have a choice between Donald Trump losing in 2020 and not having these impeachment proceedings go, or having impeachment proceedings that everybody knows are not going to result in him being removed from office, I say do it. If that's what if it means that much to you, and that's what's going to guarantee his reelection, do it. That's what happened with Clinton. Clinton's popularity went up, and the Republican popularity went down. So I say bring it on. They're going to get another 8 years of this, 4 years of this, and elections, or everybody talks about voters, turnouts, ground game, organization, phone calls. Yeah, those things all matter. But there's only one thing that really matters, and what matters is, are you motivated to go out and vote today? Because even in a very high participation election, it's still, what is it, 50, 60% maybe? Probably less than that. So the question is really, the Republican diehards are going to go out and vote. The Democratic diehards are going to go out and vote. These are about even. And the question is, what's going to happen? Who's going to want it more? In 2018, the Democrats wanted it more. I was surprised by the outcome, but they wanted it more. The people who voted for Trump in 16 didn't come out in 18, so the Democrats got the House. But this, I think this is, it's lit a fire under me. I'd love to see some feedback in the comment section, because for me and for everybody I get a chance to talk to, conservatives are just white hot with rage over this, at just the sheer, plain childishness of it, and the absolute unwillingness for these people to realize that they lost a vote. Oh, the state of California is probably monitoring my electrical output here. Uptick Mick, it's a name I haven't seen for a while, at all actually, says, I suggest they fear Trump more than they hate him. He was one of them. How many of their secrets does Trump know? If he gets the DOJ under his control, he will expose more of them, maybe even Schumer and Pelosi. Well, he's had 2 years to get that done. I like this Attorney General a lot better than I like the previous one. But if you don't bring charges against these people, then the rule of law is finished. But here's the thing about Donald Trump, and I'm really convinced of this. I don't think there's much question about it. The reason that the progressives despise him and loathe him and hate him with every molecule in their body is because Donald Trump understands what very few people on our side understand, and that is that all of the power that the left has is power that we give to them. The only power that the left has at all is the power to make you feel guilty. It's the power to make you feel bad about yourself. And social proof is the most important motivator of human behavior. It's more powerful than your deepest desires. People would rather be seen doing what everybody else does rather than be seen doing what there's closest to their heart. So, social proof was always powerful. Social media has multiplied the power of social proof and made it virtually almost irresistible. And so the only way that you can defeat the left is it's not a question of truth. It's not a question of truth, not a question of right and wrong, not a question of facts, nothing. Nothing. The only way you can defeat the left is to not care about what they say. That's it. That's all. And that's it. He doesn't care. So some clearly mentally ill, oh, there goes my chances of being on Fox News. Young woman gets up and in a kind of performance that you might see in a junior high school version of Birdie or something. You might want to say you might want to tone that down just a little bit. So he says, well, she seems like a very happy young woman, and I'm sure she's got a long life ahead of her. How dare you mock a child who's come from nowhere, struggled to stand in the face of these adults and dare to tell the truth. That's all you need to know about progressives, right? Progressivism is really pretty simple. They actually believe that if a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old gets up and says something, it means that it's more true than somebody who's been studying it or is an expert on it for 4 or 5 years. They actually believe this, or 4 or 5 decades. They actually do. They believe it. They think it must be more true. I think Evan Sayet was saying that the left says Everything I ever learned about life that mattered, I learned in kindergarten. That's a book, and they love that. Oh, if only we could get back to the innocence and purity of children, the purity of children, the raw innocence of children, these fresh minds that haven't been polluted by greed and racism and all the rest of it. Just nothing but little fountains of truth. Folks, 4-year-olds are natural born liars. They are so good at lying. They learn how to lie so fast. And I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about every person on the earth. 4-year-olds can lie well before they can speak, and they can lie with a kind of fluidity and easiness that telling the truth is not going to ever catch up with. You can talk to a 4-year-old who is alone in the kitchen with his face covered with chocolate and crumbs everywhere, and ask that 4-year-old, "Have you been eating the cookies?" And he'll say, "No." "Well, what are these crumbs doing on your shirt, and why is your face covered with chocolate?" A man came in. A man came in, jumped in through the window. A man came in through the kitchen window, and he started eating all the cookies. And I went up to tell him that you shouldn't eat those cookies. And he pushed me away with his hand, and that's why I have chocolate on my mouth. And then he went back out the window again. And they will say that, and they'll stick to their guns. So, if you believe that children are natural born truth tellers, then you're an idiot. You're either seriously mentally impaired, or you have such an emotional need to believe in simplistic things that your ideology is convincing you that what your eyes are seeing is just wrong. Children are natural liars, and they're natural narcissists, and they're very selfish too. People think you have to, I've heard, how many times have I heard this from the left? You have to teach children to lie. Growing up is the process of teaching children how to lie. No, growing up is teaching children how to tell the truth. They lie just fine on their own. They're good at it. And anybody who's ever raised a kid knows this. Anybody who's ever seen a child or anybody who's ever been a child, and I'd be willing to bet you that's pretty much everybody, knows the kids are just natural born liars. They'll try to get away with murder. You have to train them to speak the truth and make them, punish them when they don't, and make them realize that playing the truth in the long run is better odds. So no wonder the left loves this 16-year-old. She's got nothing to say. She's got nothing in terms of proof, nothing. What she has is she's young, and she's got the requisite moral outrage. She is angry enough to be telling the truth. I actually have mixed feelings about mocking this girl, because on one hand, I really genuinely think that she actually genuinely is really, as Steve Green said, a victim of child abuse. I really think there's no other explanation for it. But since she's chosen to throw herself into the spotlight, my first thought when I heard her speaking was, how disappointed is this young girl going to be when she dies in her sleep at 95 years old in the same house down by the river or down by the seaside that she grew up in? How disappointed is she going to be that she didn't get to live to see the destruction that was just around the corner for her entire 85-year life? She's going to be heartbroken. She's going to be heartbroken. I saw a 15-minute takedown of the whole theory of carbon dioxide and global warming. Just devastating. I've heard people try to refute the idea that the Earth is a sphere as well, and the flat Earth argument is not devastating, but the argument against this entire global warming thing as being something that's never happened before and is going to kill us all if we don't just shut up and give them the money. It's a 15-minute presentation by the former founder of Greenpeace. His name has eluded me. He's got all of the bona fides for far left progressive, and he finally just is it Tony Heller? Is that who I'm talking about? I just got a text in the comment section that we just mentioned a name, but that name came after I mentioned what it is. I think it's Tony Heller. In any event, it's devastating. He's just showing chart after chart after chart after chart after chart. It's devastating. So anyway, is it Patrick Moore? Thank you. So they've got a on one hand, you've got a climate scientist who's showing you sunspot cycles. He's showing you actual core temperatures from around all these historical periods. He's showing how we once got down to 170 parts per million, and at 150, plants die. And once the plants are gone, that's when you genuinely are out of, then there's no recovery. Carbon dioxide is plant food. He said plants are most comfortable at about 1,000, 1,500, 1,200 parts per million. We're at 400. They're saying if we get to 450, it's the end of the world. The Earth has never been this green because there's not been this much carbon dioxide since we've been able to see it from space. And I hate to break this to these people, but look, the Earth is 4,000 million years old, 4,500 million years old. Everything that could happen to this planet has already happened to this planet. And if the planet didn't have feedback mechanisms that restore it to the balance that we see now, we would have been a cinder or a snowball a long, 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 long time ago. But this thing the reason Earth exists is because the Earth is built in such a way to exist. If carbon dioxide levels go up, let's just say the theory's correct, carbon dioxide levels go up, it gets warmer. If it gets warmer, more water evaporates. If more water evaporates, that means more cloud cover, which means more rain for the plants, which are going to grow faster because they've got more carbon dioxide to build from, and more cloud cover reflects more sunlight back into space, which cools the Earth. And the plants that are growing because there's a lot of carbon dioxide then take the carbon out of the air and put back oxygen, and everything takes it right back to this pretty narrow band of CO2, which modern times has been at the absolute bottom of the total carbon dioxide spectrum of the planet's life. This 300 part per million thing that they're looking for from 1950 or whatever, that is about as low as it's been. Dipped a little bit lower than that once, but most of the time it's double, triple, quadruple what it is now. And any single person who understands, you don't have to be a climate scientist, you just have to read what the carbon dioxide levels were for any period in human history, and then go back all the way through pre-human history, and they will tell you what the carbon dioxide levels are, and you will realize that this whole thing's a sham, and I'm not going to turn the show into that. It's just, anyway, so. All right, let's look at some questions from the Facebook page here. I'm telling you now, I will skip any question that's not related to Norway or impeachment. By the way, when I was at that hotel, that restaurant in Norway, one of the options on the menu, I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong, but it was something like, Val. What? Yeah, you want some Val? Volk, whatever. I think it was Val. What's Val? Why, it's a perfectly lovely slice of minky whale. You get to eat food that thinks. I declined on the whale. I declined on the reindeer. In fact, I declined on just about everything. Somebody mentioned something about the food. I was not enamored with the food in Norway because, like most northern countries, they eat a lot of meat. And I'm from Bermuda, Florida, and California. And I love a good steak as much as the next guy, but I don't love a good steak 4 times a day. And it was a pretty meat-heavy kind of an existence. All right, so what are we looking for here? We're trying to find a frickin' comment section for the frickin' Stratosphere, frickin' see all. Show me. Facebook gets stranger and stranger and stranger and harder to use every single day. Come on. Comments. Here we go. All right, 24 comments. Wow. Now you would think I could list these by as most relevant, new, or all comments. You would have thought that one of those options would have been highest rated. That seems to me like that would have been a good way to rate comments, since you've got a thumbs up thing. So you're basically rating them. You would have thought that you could select comments by highest rated. But no, that would be too logical. So I'm actually going to do something I don't usually do, and that is just I'm going to kind of scan up and down and look for the biggest numbers I see. A bunch of 4s. We got a 4, we got a 4, we got a 4. Here a 5. There's a 5. Got a 5. Okay, who's going to give me a 6? Who's going to give me a 6? 6, looking for 6, looking for 6, looking for 6. Twos, looking for 6. And two, sold to the guy with the 5, which is top fan Eric M. Blake. Well, ain't that something? Of all the people in the world. Congratulations, Mr. Blake. You're the brand new winner of a question answered on the Stratosphere Lounge, live by the host. And you can pick that up in the back room after we get your tax information. Okay, so let's see what the number 5 question, the 5 uptick question winner, grand prize winner of the question of the week award, the coveted question of the week award. And let's see what we got. Top fan Eric Blake with a 5 thumb up rating says, okay, but let's get right to the point. Do you see Boris Johnson succeeding in getting Brexit done? Will Nigel Farage need to take in the reins? Is the UK about to suffer a Labour Party regime under the anti-Semite Corbyn? Let's just scroll up to the top of the heading here. And I just want to check one thing. The Stratosphere Lounge, the 2 topics only edition. Having come back from Norway, all questions tonight, I think it says all questions tonight, must be, not maybe, must be about Europe's socialism, pros and cons, and the topic of 2, of course, is impeachment. And Eric, despite the 5 thumbs up, I don't think that has anything to do with either one of them, so I'm going to have to skip it. Please ask it next week. Let's see, we're looking for 4s. I'm going to take the 4s in the order in which they come down. Hey, look, it's Eric Blake. All right, Bill, that's twice now that I've been given all right. All right, Bill, after the tragedy of Alfie Evans, how can the Brits not support getting rid of the NHS and turning away from socialized medicine? I think I'm going to refer you to the previous one, because I don't think really Britain is on the topic here. Moving along. Top fan, Dave Olson. Hey, Dave Olson. There is an Eric Blake question with 3 thumbs up that is on topic, and it looks like we'll get to that one. So Dave Olson, when the House brought formal impeachment charges against President Clinton, all 100 senators went into the cloakroom and voted unanimously that he would not be removed from office. I did not know that. And while this did prevent the unthinkable, President Al Gore, it was a blatant dereliction of their duty to the Constitution. Do you suppose that a similar vote will be taken? Would it succeed? And whether or not it did, would 15 or so Republicans break ranks and vote to remove? I don't think that any Republicans would break ranks and vote to remove. But I do think, unlike with the Clinton thing, we're not going to see 100 senators get together and say, for the good of the country, we're just going to drop this. You're going to see every single Democrat vote for it. If it gets to a Senate vote, I think you're going to see almost every Democrat vote for it. Maybe not all of them, but almost all of them. I'd be absolutely shocked if one Republican got in on that. I just simply cannot imagine it. But I also think that the days of Republicans saying, you know what, this is bad for the country, we're going to vote with the Democrats, just throw it out. Those days are gone, long gone, which is kind of disgusting, but nevertheless, there you go. So I know that's kind of an abrupt answer, Dave, but that seems to me pretty much covered. I think they're not going to just chuck it. I think they're going to vote on it. I think that most, if not all, Democrats will vote for it, and I think every single Republican will vote against it. I don't know what the margin we have is, but with Pence, I want to say we've got a 5-vote margin, somewhere in that neighborhood, something like that, maybe a little more. A.R. Aesop in the comments section says he's heard that 20 Republican reps would vote for impeachment. I don't care about the House. I don't care about the voting for the impeachment. So anyway, that's that. Eric Blake just told me I have no excuse whatsoever for selecting the questions and not selecting the questions that I want to select on my own show. Well, how about that? That's news to me. So moving on. Susan Speakman. Hi, Bill. Welcome back. While you were in Scandinavia, did you see evidence of cultural clashes between indigenous Nordics and their Arabic guest citizens? I did not. I was in downtown Oslo. I was in a kind of an immigrant section of Oslo. We had to make a trip to the police station. And this was the most heavily immigrant section of Oslo, which probably meant the most heavily immigrant section of Norway. As a matter of fact, we walked past the Islamic Cultural Center on the way to the police department, and and standing outside was a group of maybe early college kids, freshman college kids, um, you know, waiting to go in and get some culture. But while there were a number of immigrants, most of the people in the police department, lots of them were immigrants. But that may be because they're dealing with immigrants mostly. But no, I did not. I did not. I was really surprised and pleased to not see what I know exists in Stockholm and is probably worse in Manchester and other parts of Great Britain. I did not. I was not in like this exclusive neighborhood. I was right next to the Islamic Cultural Center in downtown Oslo, in immigrant quarter, according to my host, and I did not get the sense anywhere that they were being overwhelmed. I should point out that Sweden felt different, but I should also point out, and I think this needs to continue to be pointed out, that the only person I had any interaction with in Sweden was an immigrant, African immigrant, who was behind the counter at a hamburger thing, and I asked him for a Coke, and he could not have been nicer. And I don't mean just nicer. He was a really lovely guy, very very friendly, very sweet, and this is the problem with fighting evil: is fighting evil without becoming evil. That's the top. That's the hard part. Spent a fair amount of time with my host talking about that very issue. How do you fight evil without becoming evil? You just have to have the discipline and the humility to understand that you're not immune to falling into this trap. And so when we say that Muslims are overriding Sweden and destroying Sweden, we're talking about people who are determined to bring Islam into Sweden. And I'm not going to get into this whole discussion about how everybody in Islam. I understand the Quran, and I understand that there's no such thing as moderate Islam. I get that whole thing, but I do think that we constantly need to be aware that we believe in individuals, and since we believe in individuals, we can't make a blanket condemnation of any of these people. We have to understand that there are people from all over the world that belong here, people from all over the world that belong in Norway, I guess. But conversely, just because we do understand that there are innocent people who are going to be tarred with this brush doesn't mean we don't get to talk about things that have to be talked about. It doesn't mean that because there are innocent Muslim people have nothing to do with the idea of wanting to take over that society. Doesn't mean that there aren't people like that, and doesn't mean we can't talk about them for fear of hurting this guy's feelings. See, it's pretty simple, really. Not so hard. Not so hard. So anyway, moving on down the forest, going down the forest. What do we got? We got one, two, two. It's got a couple twos. Got a one, two, 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 two. Okay, let's go back up. Now we're taking threes, looking at threes, looking for three. Anybody got a three? I can't do a very good impersonation of a dude. Wow. Okay, so I made the mistake of refreshing the page. That was not a smart thing to do. I did it by accident. I closed it by accident. Oh my God, now we got 12s, 25s. Hang on one second. So I refreshed the page, which probably I should have done earlier, and now I see all kinds of new comments and stuff. One of them's got a little GIF attached of a baby screaming, and that's me. And it's from Dennis Nelson. He says, Bill, at the 20-minute mark, your response to Scott, your attitude, your anger, this will be in the Bill Whittle now. This is where so many of us are at exactly. The truth of what is going on is frustrating and obvious, and the fact that we even have to have a conversation to prove what is so blatantly out there is insane. Don't ever back down or soften up. You are spot on right in every regard. Your tone is 100% right. Thank you. That was very kind of you. The message comes from my mother. And thanks, Mom. No, but seriously, thanks. So George, George. Every now and then, George comes up with something that just is just he wins the internet every now and then. And George went on to say that the comment order is not necessarily random. George went on to say that the comments are ranked in order of their woodiness and their tinniest. Tinniest, yes. So, a comment that might have the word gourd, let's say gourd. That's a nice woody word, gourd. If you put gourd into your question, it'd probably go up to the top, because gourd is a nice woody term. It's not tinny term. Like, I forget what the tinny terms are. Anyway, thank you. Let's see. So we got a whole stack of new questions, and one of them comes in at like 25. It's sitting right there at the top, and it's like out of the park winner in terms of upvotes. So sorry to the previous order, but I accidentally closed the page. I had to open it again. So here we go. At 25 upvotes, running away with this thing in a rout, is Arnie Jeffers. It's impeachable if he's asking for a cover-up. He asked for an investigation to be reopened. The company in Ukraine was Burisma. Joe Biden got them to fire the prosecutor. I can't find a single story that says that a new prosecutor ever looked into Burisma. It all just went away. The talking heads say the U.S. wanted the prosecutor gone because he wasn't fighting corruption hard enough. That is the line, because a new prosecutor never was assigned. This is precisely right. Arnie, I said this at the beginning before I read your comment, and this is the thing nobody's talking about. Put all of this stuff aside about influence and quid pro quo, but put all of it aside. Put it all aside. Get down to the absolute moral essence of it, and take politics and take individuals out of it. There is an enormous difference between somebody saying, do me a favor and look into this alleged wrongdoing, and then saying, do me a favor and make sure nobody looks into this alleged wrongdoing. How are you going to prosecute a president for saying, I would like you to look into something that you and I both know is funny? Now, if Donald Trump had said something like, listen, there's a bunch of people digging around about the deal I made in Kiev, and listen, do me a favor and make sure nobody gets a hold of those files. That is an entirely different animal, but that's not what happened. And so guess who is missing from this entire because we're talking about impeaching the president now. You know what we're not talking about? We're not talking about Hunter Biden, and we're not talking about Joe Biden. That's how it works. And we know it. It took us 30 years for us just to understand really in our bones just how low Americans can go. But now that we know, now we know. We used to be mystified by this. Now it's, no. You're dealing with people who don't cast a reflection. What did they do to Brett Kavanaugh? You had this grown woman curling her hair with a little girl voice saying that he raped me, and my 4 friends can back me up, and the 4 friends say, what are you talking about? Yeah, A.R. Aesop, member of the Aurora Republic, I might point out, and a fine one at that, says they're not Americans, they're Democrats. I'm be willing to agree with you. I would actually just, to split some hairs here, I would say they're not Americans, they're progressives. There are, believe it or not, tens and tens of millions of fine Americans who are Democrats. Tens of millions of them. They're serving in the military. They have a different view about how things should go. They have a different opinion about certain values, but they're Americans and they love the country. We're not talking about them. We're talking about the progressives. We're talking about these people who are either so ideologically bent like AOC and the rest of them, or who are so politically addicted that they'll play any card they have to stay in power. Yeah, and Eric points out that women hated Christine Blasey Ford more than most because they saw right through the baby voice. Exactly. Most women looking at Blasey Ford's testimony, whether they were Republican or Democrat, kind of went, I don't know, I don't really believe it. So they slander a guy, and then they slander him again. See, this is how it works. If they can't get rid of Kavanaugh, they have to discredit him. They have to make him into a rapist, so that people think no matter whatever happens now, for the end of time, he didn't do jack, but for the end of time, there's going to be half of the country is going to think, oh, well, that decision came down from a guy who raped a woman. They know it didn't happen. And this recent reallegation of a week ago, they know that didn't happen. And the press knows it didn't happen because what's left of reputable newspapers wouldn't cover the story, but that didn't stop the New York Times. So it's just, this is why Donald Trump is president. And this is why I'm feeling much, much, much better than I did even 6 months ago. Not because Trump is president, but that's a big part of it. The reason I'm feeling good is that it is dawning on me now, thanks to the internet and shows like this, brought to you by our members, that it is becoming clear to middle Americans, when I say middle, politically middle Americans, that there is in fact an elitist group of people who call themselves journalists and news people, and they are not in the news business. They are in the news suppression business and the news invention business. And I think that that is so widely aware now throughout the entire culture that I think it's over. Look, I want to go back to something I said earlier. Because this is not only is it important, it's the thing. Right? If I could teach everybody, if I had one message I could put in people's heads, 10-second message, I would say, doesn't matter what they think or say about you, they're going to hate you anyway. Once you understand that, it doesn't matter. You're a racist. I'm not, but okay. You're a misogynist. Sure. Okay, fine. Donald Trump is a anti-Semite. Well, he's an anti-Semite that has Jewish grandchildren that he loves, but sure, whatever. If that's what you need, fine. But we let them. And when people wound up the outrage machine over this mentally ill Swedish girl, and Mike Knowles says, well, she's mentally ill. And he says she's mentally ill because she's already admitted. She's got OCD, she's got anorexia, she's got selective mutism or something. Mike Knowles says, well, she's mentally ill. And Fox News clutches the pearls, how dare you? How could you possibly? We would must. Well, oh, no. Before we say another word, we must apologize to this young woman for this horrible slander that only came about because we had not properly vetted our guests. Michael Knowles is banned from Fox News forever. And dear God, how will we ever be able to apologize to you? All right, Fox. I don't know. I'd like to hear a little feedback about this, but Fox have been getting worse and worse and worse. But I have to tell you, when they, it's not the banning of Mike Knowles. That's bad enough. That's bad enough. The thing that I will never forgive Fox News for is this instantaneous, how can we apologize to this young woman who's been slandered by somebody who came on Fox News and spoke the open truth that the girl herself just admitted a little while ago. You can go to hell, Fox, honestly. Seriously, Fox, go to hell. There is a big, big hole in this country, and somebody with big money ought to understand that there is room to be to the right of Fox News, and Fox News was making a ton of money because they were to the right of everybody else. So, okay. All right. One American Network. Good idea. Eric Blake says OANN, One American News Network, and The Blaze. Yeah, all right. So anyway, how dare you say such a thing? But see what I'm saying about this is the point. We give them the power. If like most people, if you hear somebody saying, how could you insult a little girl like that? And you feel bad, like, oh, I didn't mean to insult a little girl. I didn't mean to, I wasn't trying to pick on her. Well, okay. She put herself in front of the United Nations, gave a performance, and while she's not an adult, she did have an adult present who co-signed the deal. So she now has the attention of the world, and since she wanted the attention of the world, and since her parents pushed her into the spotlight with the attention of the world, now she's got the attention of the world, and that means it's fair game to talk about her. So the girl is obviously mentally ill. She's wrong about global warming, but she's also mentally ill. That girl has the expression on her face of a 60-year-old. And that girl has been, I believe her. This is the thing. She's dead wrong, but I believe that she thinks these things. But Unlike somebody who just gets up and speaks, I've forgotten the name of that amazing young woman from Africa who got shot in the head and went on to speak out against Islam. That was a real person speaking. This performance, this outrage, this kind of delivery. I should be a child. I shouldn't be running the Stratosphere Lounge now. You've taken my childhood away, all of you Strato Loungers. I should be at home barbecuing steaks and having fun watching football games, and instead I'm here, because of people like you demanding that I speak up. How dare you? C minus, maybe C minus. No, you know what? Let's make it a D plus. That was a D plus. One parent is an actor, the other parent's an opera singer. Greta, go back, try it again, and this time a lot less opera singer and a lot more actor. Can we try that? Yes. You want to throw a kid out there? You know what? It's even more important. I just got a better handle on it. So here's what I say to the left. If you want to hide behind a 16-year-old, if you want to use a 16-year-old girl with obvious mental problems as your personal body armor, stop crying if she takes a few rounds. Right? You want to use her as living body armor. You want to hide behind her, thinking she's going to protect you. Don't cry when the people you're shooting at shoot back at you and hit the girl that you're hiding behind. Trevor nails it. Any surprise she's Swedish and not Norwegian? No, not a surprise. I won't say a Norwegian wouldn't do that. But one thing I did notice about the Norwegians was that they're very proud people. And they're proud of their history, and they're proud of their country, and they're proud of the fight they put up in World War II. I don't think Hitler ever would have gotten the bomb, but certainly once the Norwegians raided that ship and sank the ship with the heavy water, and it went down to the bottom of the fjord, which is like 6,000 feet or something. Once that was over, then there was no chance for them. The Swedes just collapsed, cooperated, and sold iron ore to Hitler. The Norwegians are not the Swedes. They're much better people, in my opinion. I told a joke twice that got a huge laugh, and this amazed me because I said before I said the joke, I said, I know this is the national joke of Norway, but I like it. And then I told the joke, and these two Norwegians I told the joke to roared. They'd never heard it before. It's inconceivable to me. Here's the joke. It's very simple. What does Sweden have that Norway doesn't have? Good neighbors. They just exploded. They thought that was hilarious because it's true. Anyway, let's see. So anyway, yeah, Arnie. So I think I pretty much answered that one. Is it might be we got mice in the room, loud mice. I'm just going to kind of scroll here. Joe Kenjero, I'm over the rankings thing. Joe Kenjero says, by the way, if you read the transcript, the favor requested was to look into the Ukrainian meddling in the 2016 election, i.e. CrowdStrike and hacking of the DNC server. The Biden conversation transpired after the Ukrainian president started talking about going after corruption in the government. Great. You guys want to nail your flag to this sinking ship? Knock yourselves out. Knock yourselves out. Let's see. I'm just trying to find something that's not stuff we've already covered. Let me say this, because I've seen two comments in here. I don't know if anybody's been watching this. I'm not going to mention the names of the people who say this, but I've seen two of them in this comment section, and I'll just read one of them verbatim. I get enough crap about my president without having to listen to Scott Ott, Mr. Never Trumper, piling on more. Let him go work for CNN. I don't know how I can be more clear about this. I really don't. I've said it 100 times, so I'll say it 101 times. I pay Scott Ott to play that role, and he plays that role very, very well. The harder Scott Ott fights at me, the better I can respond, and the more encompassing the counter argument becomes. Scott Ott is an enormous patriot. Scott Ott understands and loves his Constitution better than anybody I've ever met. And Scott Ott was and remains critical of aspects of Donald Trump, but Scott Ott is 100% behind Trump versus the rest of these people. Scott Ott is taking a lot of crap over something, and it bothers him, and it bothers me more. If you can't understand that I'm paying him to be this guy, then what do I have to do? I'd be delighted, and I'm not being facetious and I'm not being flip here. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If you would like me to send you a personal email explaining this, I will do it. But Scott Ott is a patriot, and Scott Ott is a conservative, and Scott Ott is the best man I know. And for him to continue to press the attack on me is for me to show that no matter what you come back at me with, you can't win the argument. It is entirely the point of that show that there's an argument. We don't hear arguments. All we hear is our side talks, their side talks. When Scott comes at me with these things, there are moments, and if you watch, I don't want to give this away, but I might as well, so it's important. Listen carefully. If you watch Bill Whittle now, Scott will ask a question, I'll answer. Scott will rebut, I'll answer. Many times, not every show, but many times, Scott will come back with something, and you'll see me listening, and you might even see just a little tiny little flicker of my eyes. And that is the sound of me going, get out the little cane, little hat, and doing a little tap dance, because I'm going to need 4 or 5 seconds to figure out what the answer to this attack is. And I've never failed to come up with that answer. And that is just excellent work on his part. I'd be curious to know a little bit about the feedback of this. I didn't lead with this. I certainly wasn't planning on talking about this, but I have talked to Scott, and I would like to see, he mentioned it too, I'd like to see Scott do a weekly show here. I thought his series on the Constitution, Freedom's Charter, was just exceptional. And the more I hear these kind of things, which have not gone away, the more I want him to do a show where he gets to be Scott Ott and not the guy that I'm paying him to be that everybody hates. It's just not fair. Sir Wilbin says News Actually was fantastic. I thought News Actually was fantastic. Scott, I know you never watch any of this stuff or pay any attention to any of it. Scott Ott makes this website work. I mean, Scott Ott makes the company work. He does all of it. He puts up the videos. He does the headlines, all of it. And when I see this kind of thing, it really bothers me. Let me tell you what would not bother me. This I think is fair. If somebody were to say, look, I'm tired of people criticizing Donald Trump, and I don't like watching Bill Whittle now because I don't like hearing that kind of comment coming back, even though I know Scott's playing devil's advocate, that's a perfectly legitimate comment, and a fair one. And if you don't want to hear Donald Trump attacked, okay, but let's just remember, the reason that Scott attacks Donald Trump is so that yours truly can defend Donald Trump and defeat Scott's attack. And probably every other show, or maybe every third or fourth show, I get the response I want, which is, well, how would you handle diplomacy? Do you think diplomacy between two heads of state is two guys getting together in the middle of an enormous ornate hall with mirrors and bowing to each other and exchanging scrolls? Is that how you think diplomacy actually happens? What would you do? How do you think diplomacy works, Scott, as Mr. Progressive? Well, I can't really answer that question. No, of course you can't. Moving on. I am very, very proud of that show. And I'm proud of it only for one reason, and that is because I've not seen it anywhere else. I've not seen it anywhere else. I'm not seeing it anywhere else. I have yet to see anywhere in the 10 years I've been doing this, have I seen anybody ever apply these principles to the exact news story that's going on and just trot this thing out and say, here's your answer. And it's not my answer, because I've backed off on it a little bit now, only because Scott's getting tired of hearing of it. But I still feel the same. And for the first 100 episodes, I think I probably said this 90% of the times of the shows when it was over. And Scott says, "Thanks for watching." And we hang on for a second. We cut the show. And I say, "Geez, where did that come from? I mean, where did that come from?" I mean it sincerely, bottom of my heart. I listened to some of the things come out of my mouth about this. Where did that come from? That's actually very, very good. And it's like, well, it comes from understanding this thing. It comes from understanding it. And so my feeling on it is the harder that Scott plays the part of the progressive, the more conservatives triumph when we win. And he's never once won. And it's not because he lets me win. He's never once won because his philosophy, the philosophy I'm paying him to argue, is not capable of winning against our philosophy. And that's the entire purpose of the show. So, there we go. I do feel happy, not to leave on such a downer note. I have to tell you, having had this experience myself, I'm very happy on those occasions when Scott says to me, I was in the furniture store today, and somebody came up and said, "You're Scott Ott?" Yes, I am. "I love you guys. You guys are great." He deserves it. And Scott, I don't know if you're watching, but if you're not, I'll talk to you about it on our shoot tomorrow morning. How about News Actually? Maybe, I don't know. Scott said he couldn't do News Actually because in the days prior to the election, the lead into the election, anything that was even a sideways hint at not 100% backing Donald Trump, any kind of a genuinely comic criticism of the president, just had people just losing their minds. So anyway, I thought News Actually was very, very funny, and I really enjoyed that show. But anyway, Scott deserves a chance to be himself so people can see who the guy really is. I suppose people who come here recently, relatively recently, having not seen him as much on Right Angle and not seeing the work he did at PJTV, can take this opinion. But I got to tell you, I spent enough time on this because it's not fair. Anyway, so much for that. Now, Eric Blake in the comment section says, okay, here's a non-UK European socialism question right here. Why do the socialists in Europe seem perfectly okay with nuclear power, but ours don't? I think that question is actually 10 to 15 to maybe 20 years out of date. 10 or 20 years ago, the Europeans were running their entire culture on nuclear power. But recently, after Fukushima, they have just simply just unplugged it. They've just unplugged it. So they're now on the same thing. Nuclear power, I'm doing the Cold War, and people's misunderstanding about nuclear power and nuclear weapons. I would say that there's more hysterical misunderstanding about nuclear power and nuclear weapons than any other topic in our culture today. I mean, honestly. Dave Big Booty comes out with the thorium. Yes, thorium's great, but still. No one died in 3 Mile Island. No one died at Fukushima. People died in Chernobyl, all right, but they died in a reactor that didn't have a containment on it because the Ukrainians thought it was too expensive. And the reactor exploded on Chernobyl because a Communist Party boss who was drunk off his ass was convinced that he needed to impress his political higher-ups with making the reactor run at levels that were lower than were allowed. And all of the technicians are saying, you can't do this, it's going to explode. And he says, well, if it doesn't explode, you're going to the gulag. Okay, well, I guess I'll go back to my desk then. And people see this and they don't think, well, people died. How many people died in coal accidents in the previous century? Hundreds of thousands. And I just don't get it. I would like to live in a society where I'd like to live in a town where I could say, yeah, up on the top of that hill there, underneath the swimming pool, is a 25 megawatt nuclear reactor. It's completely self-contained. It's good for 25, 30 years. And maybe it runs on thorium, maybe it doesn't. It is designed to fail safe, which means that if any component of it fails, the reactor shuts down. It doesn't require water pumps working, doesn't require anything. If it needs things to work, but if any of them don't work, it just stops. I'd love it. That'd be great. Then you could do what your dad always accused you of. You could actually air condition the outdoors. How many times in a hot climate, or you probably get the inverse in cold climates, you go outside, you leave the door open, your father says, I'm not paying to air condition the entire state of Florida. Well, you got one of those things up there, what difference does it make? That thing's going to generate 25 million watts of power for the next 25, 30 years, whether you use it or not. Why not? Why not air condition outdoors? Clean, cheap energy, and clean, and really when you get to nuclear, it's virtually clean, free energy. Just think about that. This is why the left hates it, because it's endless energy. They can't have it. I remember one of these guys, a Greenpeace guy, said, somebody asked him, well, you're so set against oil exploration and stuff like that. How would you feel if humanity were to come upon an extremely inexpensive, absolutely clean form of energy? And this guy said, it'd be the biggest catastrophe in the history of the world. He doesn't want clean energy. He wants no energy. He wants everybody else to put away their stuff. Yeah, Wabov Kurg says dilithium crystals. I'm with you, man. I'm a dilithium guy, personally. This whole office is powered by dilithium crystal. Size of a grain of sand. Now witness the awesome power of this fully armed and operational conservative opinion studio. I didn't know that. Dave Big Booty, again for the win. There is 1,000,000 times the energy in a nuclear bond than there is in an electron bond, which would be a chemical bond. I knew they were more powerful. I didn't know they were that much more powerful. By the way, since the show is known for its ability to run off the rails, if you really understand E equals mc squared, if you understand the relationship between energy, mass, and the speed of light, and all that stuff that makes nuclear power work and everything else work, if you really understand it, and you start thinking, wow, how come uranium can release so much power? How can fusion release, hydrogen atoms release so much power? Where does this power come from? Well, I did something that actually helped me think about this quite a lot. Empty space is virtually empty. There's very, very little matter in space compared to the size. That's why you never see a scale model. That's because I just finally realized that this is the sentence I'm looking for. No one has ever seen a scale model of the solar system because you cannot see the solar system in a scale model. If you are set up so that you see from Earth to Neptune, and you can take that in one glance, then the planets are too small to see. It is a physical impossibility to see the solar system in scale. So anyway, there's a lot of nothing out there. And I came to realize that what really is a better way to look at it is to just look at it for what's actually true. And that is that matter is crystallized energy. That if you take a great deal of energy and smash it into a small place, you get matter. And that energy and matter is locked up in the matter. But if I have antimatter, those two things will go together and create more energy than the sun. A couple of stiff mugs of coffee and anti-coffee probably produce more energy than the sun. So all of this matter is essentially crystallized energy, and that's why it has the power to bend space through gravity. That's a whole other story. Trevor says, if a teacher wants a scale model of the solar system, hand in a blank piece of paper. This is a fun little thought experiment. If you spread out a map of the United States, just an old map of the United States about this big, right? Put it on a table. You look at Los Angeles and New York, and I asked you to tell me how high above the paper do you think an airplane flies? If you fly from LA to New York on a map this big, how high above the paper do you think the airplane is? And the answer is, it's in the paper. You're looking at 2,500 miles of country. Airplane flies at 6 miles high. The plane it's in the paper. It's not above the paper. That's the kind of thing about scale. I mean, technically speaking, obviously, it is slightly above the paper from a mathematical point of view, but I don't think it's detectable by the human eye. So, anyway, interesting little thing there. Do a couple more, and then I'm going to get out of here. Just because I haven't seen this name before, I just agree. It's more of a statement, but I think it's absolutely right. Janine Gibbs Tyre says the Democrats will overlook any proof in Trump's favor. They have one aim and one aim only, to get rid of our president. You're absolutely right. And what I like about that, Jeannie, and the actual operational phrase there is get rid of our president. He's not the president of the news media. He's not the president of the elitists. He's not the president of Washington Insiders. He's not the president of these federal agencies. He is the president of the people. And the only reason he's the president of the people is because he can afford to not be beholden to these other people. And when I say he can afford it, I don't just mean that he can afford it financially. He doesn't need the money. I think everybody can agree with that. But when I say he can afford it, Donald Trump, and I can say this with a fair amount of confidence, is not suffering from small ego identity. So when I say Donald Trump can afford it, Donald Trump has enough buildings around the world with Trump on it so that if some reporter from CNN says you're a bad guy, Donald Trump goes, maybe I'm a bad guy. Pff, loser. Fake news. Next question. He can afford it. He can afford to ignore what these people say about him because his confidence in himself is that high. And this is another example of what I've been talking about on and off. We give them the power. We give them the power to tell us what to do. They say, do this, and we say, well, that's horrible. I don't want to do that. You're a racist for saying so. Oh, in that case, I guess I better do it then. You just gave them the power. They certainly don't have the power of arms. Merlin mentions that a guy on YouTube did a scale model of the solar system. He took a sun illuminated about the size of a basketball. Earth was a marble, I want to say maybe a mile further away. And then he took a truck out all the way. So you could see that's where Neptune is, and here's where the sun is, but you couldn't see Neptune and the sun in the same shot, in the same frame. It's actually very good, very, very good, though. If you want to look on YouTube for scale model of solar system, it's actually a very good video. But anyway, makes the point, really. So yeah, a lot of people are angry, and that's good, because that's what wins elections, is people getting up and going out and voting. And there's voter fraud, and there's vote harvesting, and there's all this other stuff. And that can probably, I had somebody who knew something about this. They said that fraud could probably swing maybe 3%, certainly 1, maybe 2, or even 3% of the vote could be influenced by voter fraud. But beyond that, there is no fraud big enough to cover the magnitude of 100 million votes. And so you have to win by 3 or more percentage points. And that's going to depend on who's going to come out, the people who hate Trump or the people that love Trump. I think the people that love Trump are going to come out and win anyway. But after this, my, that is refreshing. Okay. Let's see here. Daily Wire says Senate Democrats asked Ukraine to help them. Yeah. So the Democrats asked the Ukrainians to give them some stuff that they thought might be. This thing is going to blow up in Joe Biden's face, and I had the kind of default position about Joe Biden, like he's a nice guy, he's a hardworking guy, he's a man of the people, but he's not I don't like him. And then I saw him in the debate with Paul Ryan, and I just wanted to rip his eyes out. He's not a good guy. And Victor Davis Hanson, if you haven't read it, did an article on Biden as Buckaroo Banzai. And listening to Biden tell these tall tales about taking chains and beating up Donald Trump and beating up the tough kids in school and beating up these people, and I was there and I beat them up, and it's like, Joe, even if you're right and you're not, uh, this is trying a little hard. He got into a fight with a black kid in school named Corn Pop. Mm, well, go ahead. And even though Joe was outnumbered 5-1, he went down there with a chain. And when Corn Pop realized that Joe was a real man and wasn't seriously not afraid and was ready to fight, then Corn Pop decided that it was a kind of person that he needed to be friends with. And so Joe and Corn Pop turned into be great buddies, but only out of the mutual respect necessary from being willing to beat each other's ass. And Biden sounds a bit, he sounds a bit like he's trying a little bit too hard, you know. Corn Pop. Possible. Unlikely, but possible. Yeah. So once the front runner, the Democratic Party machine guy, who's connected to Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, all the rest. Once that guy realized there was some chance of this investigation, which had been safely buried, suddenly coming back again, then the media swung into action and made this whole thing about Trump. And the reason that the Democrats are making this noise about impeachment, if I had to guess, I would say they're not going to take the vote because they know that will kill them in the fall. I think they're making a lot of noise now. And then in the fall, they're going to slowly let this thing die. And the reason they're making noise now is they want people to be talking about impeachment, not talking about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. But I think most people can realize this. It's pretty obvious. That's a good point, too. Kathy Ward says that they're saying that the impeachment of Trump would be that he's trying to get rid of a political rival, but Biden isn't a political rival. He's not. And furthermore, of all the people I would like to face, Biden is the one I'd like to face the most. If I had to pick somebody to run against, I'd take Biden for sure. I would take him. Because then you just have two old white men by the democratic system of morality and governance. And if you got two old white men, then why don't you pick the one who's successful, rich, funny, and sane? It's just a thought. So anyway, I think that's pretty much going to do it. We're at the 1 hour and 40-minute mark or so. And I think we pretty much beat this horse out to death. It's going to be a very interesting week. It's always an interesting week. But in any event, I think these guys have really, really, really made a big mistake. I hope so. I really am dying for a real kind of Lord of the Rings, Barad-dûr, come crashing down, tears in your eyes kind of thing. I really am. I know that life doesn't work that way and that I'm raised on movies like everybody else, and so I expect this big dramatic payoff that just never happens in the real world. But my God, I would love to see these people in handcuffs being walked into the federal building, preparing for their upcoming trials in their orange jumpsuits. I'd really like to see that. I would very much like to see that. So anyway, if I didn't get you tonight, next week I'm sure we'll have open question. But I look down and I see Merlin says, Bill, I actually need an answer to my question. And I know Merlin, so Merlin, where is the question that you actually need an answer to? Is it in the Facebook stream? If you want to repost it there in the comment section, I'll wait for the little echo to go out and back again. But yeah, that sure would be nice. Martin, okay. Is it the Martin Archer issue? Which I don't know about. I just see that is that what we're talking about? Let me see something that says, I know Martin's been having a bit of a rough time. Let's go see if there's something about there on the website. That's the same question next week. Okay, something's going on. Let me see what's going on here. This new website looks really good, Scotty. And I might point out that the thumbnails are just magnificent. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I the person that do the thumbnails? how silly of me. How could I have forgotten that? Blog. Foghorn. Oh, Foghorn's doing Star Citizen tutorials. That's awesome. I don't see it right now. Okay, please don't talk about you on YouTube. I don't understand how I'm going to answer this question publicly. Here it is. Here's the link. Hang on. Working on it. Working on it. Okay, sorry about this. Hang on a second. Okay. I didn't read the whole thing, got the gist of it. I understand why you don't want to have this put on YouTube. So it's on the website, and I'm about to do, in fact, I need to remind myself. There's a similar person who wrote me, and I need to find that email, and it got lost during the trip. But under certain situations, it is a great pleasure to be able to help out in a situation like this. So, Martin, don't worry, I'm not going to say another word here. We'll talk some more. Contact me at info@billwhittle.com if you don't mind. And who is it that I need to find here? I almost dropped this thing. Here, there it is. Yeah, it's from September 21st. Okay. I will forward that to myself and make sure that idiot gets this thing. Nope. When I say this idiot, I'm referring to myself, obviously. Sometimes I'm reduced to this. Sometimes I have an email that I drop and forget. I get a lot of emails, and sometimes I have to re-email myself, which is what I just did. Okay, so thanks to the swell group of people in the Strato Lounger community. There was an issue that I wasn't aware of, and now I'm aware of it, and so on. So that's taken care of. I'll be looking forward to tomorrow. Martin, just send me an email, info@billwhittle.com. We'll chat some more. I got a pretty good idea what we can do, if anything. And it turns out that my friend Merlin's question. What's the difference between fascism and statism? I don't know. What's the difference between fascism and statism? Oh, it's a question. Well, undoubtedly, you already have an answer. I made it. I just recorded the first episode of the Cold War podcast, and I said, look, you got two different. You got the Berlin Wall, and you got one group on the east. You got one group on the west. And the names have changed over time. Sometimes they've been run by Republicans, Democrats, back and forth, communists, socialists, so on and so on, so on, so on. And as far as I'm able to determine, the only thing I get that consistently, constantly works is individualists versus collectivists. That's the only thing I can find that transgresses all times throughout history, no matter what label, Republican. It's like there are individualists and there are collectivists. And individualism is a very, very, very new idea. It's less than 250 years old. Difference between fascism and statism. One is wearing "You Go Boss," says A.R. Cura, who's really, really knocking out these replies tonight. Merlin, it's a fairly complicated answer, but honestly, fascism is a subset of statism. I think that's about the pithiest I can put it. All fascists are statists, but not all statists are fascists. No, he says there is no difference. We agree. Yeah, one's a bigger circle. Fascism is part of statism, but statism is not necessarily part of fascism. You can have communist statists who are not fascists but still statists, but you cannot have fascists that are not statists. which again goes to my, I think definition is the best that there is in terms, it's not my definition, I just think it's the most useful way to think about things. Collectivists and individualists. And I'm one of the individual guys. And so are all of you in rigid lockstep with this individualistic philosophy that you are required to believe in. Okay. That will do. Excellent. So I can go now. Been fun. It's disturbing to see these headlines, and it's not just disturbing, it is really, really enraging. But a little outrage is what makes elections turn, and I think these idiots have so far lost their mind that they do not realize how far in the weeds they are, and I just have no idea. Dave wanted to know when the podcast will be released. I don't. We'll certainly be putting out promos. I don't want to be. Technically, I'm really leaking it now. I suppose technically I'm in violation of an NDA, but I consider this to be promotion. It looks like it's going to start. I want to say first week in November, and then one a week for quite a while, 10 weeks, I think. So anyway, all right. So that'll do it for this edition of the Stratosphere Lounge. Normally at this point I say thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible, so let's make sure we don't miss that. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible. Usually I say, and honey, I know you're watching. I'm on my way home, but this time I'll say, honey, I know you're watching, and I'll be over at the couch in just a minute. See, I had a mystery guest the whole time, and what amazing discipline did I show? And the only reason I didn't say that she was here was because if I said she was here, then the whole show would be Natasha, about Natasha again, as always, and I just, getting a little tired of hearing about Natasha, how wonderful she is on my freaking show. It's my show, not her show, my show. All right, I'm glad we got that clear. Let's just make sure that we never talk about this again. Didn't I tell you these idiots would believe anything? Didn't I tell you? These suckers, they'd buy anything. Absolutely buy anything. I could say anything, and they would go, wow, that's really deep, that's really incredible. What? What, Mike? No, we don't have to worry about. Oh, wait.